Our mission is to inspire, educate, and motivate young people across the Caribbean. This is the Vision Seekers podcast, where views collide, founded by Amanda Webley and Shawala Richards during the COVID-19 pandemic. But VSP is more than two. We are a team dedicated to seeking out and presenting solutions to the problems that matter to you through open and honest conversations. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to another episode of the Vision Seekers podcast. I'm Amanda Webley, your host for today's episode, delving into the nuances of beauty standards within the Black community. Throughout our discussion, we'll explore the history, impacts, and potential solutions to the issue of colorism and skin bleaching, and hear firsthand from our guests about their personal experiences as Black women and as a Black man in, well, not for the Black man, but for the women, a predominantly white nation. So before we dive in, I want to encourage you to show your support to the podcast by liking, commenting, subscribing, and clicking the notification bell for new episodes. So before we jump in, I'd like you guys to introduce yourselves to our listeners and viewers by sharing your full name, your nationality, and what you do or something you're passionate about. So start with Z.
Okay. Hi, guys. My name is Zara. I am African-American, fully. That gets confused sometimes. I know I'm of lighter descent, but I am African-American, and I host a podcast by myself. It's called the Chemically Imbalanced Black Girl Podcast, where I talk about mental health and just everyday life struggles and stories of someone who deals with anxiety and depression and things like that.
All right, awesome. Akosyah, you can go ahead and...
Hi, I'm Akosyah, or I'm known as Akosyah Set. I'm a Smaitawi Kemetic yoga teacher, and I live in Germany. And I am of Jamaican descent, but I grew up all my life in Germany.
Right. And for a male perspective, we have Dominic. So you can go ahead and share your full name, nationality, and something you're passionate about.
Yeah, my name is Dominic Wade. I am a Jamaican by descent. And something that I'm passionate about, I am very passionate about machine learning AI. I'm also passionate about self-development as well, personal development as well, and mental health. These are some things that I'm really interested
in. All right. So thank you for joining us. And I'm honored to have you on the show. So let's jump in with the first question. Anybody can go ahead and answer first. I'll give you guys all up an opportunity to answer. What does beauty look like to you? Who wants to go first? Okay, Zara.
For me, I don't think it looks like anything to me in my experience. I feel like beauty is more of a feeling. Because I know we've all had the experience of meeting someone and not finding them physically attractive, but the personality and the way they make you feel could alter their first initial physical attraction. So, and even when I'm not looking to be attracted to somebody, even just somebody having full confidence in themselves, like in the way they dress and their hairstyle and their self-care routine, you can see beautiful. You can tell when somebody feels beautiful or confident. So yeah, I just think beautiful is more of a feeling than it is something that it looks like. Because what I think is beautiful, you might not see as beautiful, but you might be able to feel it. So that's what I think.
All right.
I agree with Sari as well. On her point, I think that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But my real take on beauty is like beauty is the essence of naturality. Like you're who you are as a natural person, just natural. Take away clothes, take away like everything about you, like how you represent yourself. Even though how you represent yourself really has everything to do with who you are, but there's a lot of people that put on a fake persona about themselves, just trying to fit in, or they feel like the world won't accept them, hence they try to fit in. But there is so much about a person's natural state, like who they are as a person, and I believe that has everything to do with beauty. I believe if you're going to accept your own beauty, that's where you're gonna have to go to accept your own beauty and stand by that and live by that. So it has to be about the essence of naturality.
All right.
So the
Right.
question is, what does beauty look like to me? Right? So if we're talking about what it looks like, I do have certain ideas of what I find beautiful just by looking at it. And I agree. I also prefer natural beauty. I usually find, let's say, women, when I look at them, more attractive without makeup or with less makeup than with makeup or made up and stuff. Like, I always prefer the natural version over everything. And yeah, I mean, when personality and all that stuff comes in, that's something else. But just by looking at someone, when they're natural and have a certain energy about them, that looks confident, that I usually find beautiful. But also, I must say, I usually find darker people beautiful, as in people of African descent, within the range of skin tones, all of that, but people of African descent. Growing up in Germany, especially, that is also something that I had to decode in my head, what I find beautiful, because what I see all the time is European people. But I realized at some point that I do prefer people who look more of African descent just by looking
I
at them.
agree.
It's awesome answers, guys. And notice that you guys highlighted that beauty is not just about what you look like. So maybe that wasn't the best way to phrase that question. It also has to do with an attitude, how you present yourself, being comfortable in your skin and showing that to the world. So kind of on that same frame, how do beauty standards and our history affect the way we perceive our skin? So in terms of our history as a Black people, how do you think that affects how we see ourselves and how we present ourselves to the world?
For me, I think, and I can only speak from an African American point of view, but I know that here in America, race is very sensitive and it's very triggering. So when our whole country has been kind of put on this Jedi mind trick of, pale skin and pointy features are what deserves to be on the front page of literally anything that has to do with entertainment, that kind of seeps into your psyche a little bit, and the darker you may be, the worse that might be on your psyche, because you're like, I'm very far from that shade. And according to the media, my shade is the shade that is unflattering, unprofessional, or unattractive. And that's for 500, 400 years that African Americans have been drilled and seen that, heard that, been said that, been shouted that at. So I think it's deeper than what social media shows us, even though that is where the brunt of it is. It's more of I think, going back to what Akosyah, just like she said, you kind of have to program yourself out of something like that when it's been drilled into you since birth. You kind of have to believe it until you get around a group of people who have programmed themselves out of it, or someone who's never had that problem with colorism in the first place. So it is something you have to mentally check yourself out of and be like, my skin is beautiful no matter what anybody says.
It's true. I agree with Zara as well. I think that our history of like how we perceive ourselves as Black people has everything to do with slavery, everything that has to do with everything that happened to us for like past 400, 500 years. And on the plantations, when we were working, we were told that we were ugly. We were told that we weren't supposed to accept ourselves. We were brainwashed. So many things happened during that period of our lives, and it literally carried through us for generations to generations. And there's something that I'll normally believe in known as the intergenerational transmission trauma. And I believe that trauma can be passed down from generations to generations. I believe that how your parents feel about themselves, children can ultimately feel about. Children can feel that same way about themselves. And that's something that is carried down from generations to generations. But even though Amanda, your question didn't ask this, I think the way of how we're going to resolve ourselves, and coming back to what Zara said about encouragements of how we're going to resolve ourselves, is for Black people to come together and create an environment where they can realize the power and realize their beauty within themselves. Realize that they're just much more than what we were told we were, and realize that we're coming from a rich background. Our ancestors were kings and queens. We have to believe in that. We have to believe in the fact that we are much more than who we are. We have to believe in the fact that when it comes to like sportsmanship, when it comes to like academics, especially like how you see track and fields, especially how you see, Tiger Woods, Usain Bolt, all of these different people, they are Black people, they are leading, representing ourselves and being there and representing our nations. So why not just create an environment where all of us can learn to accept ourselves, learn to actually live in harmony and live in peace? These are some things that I really want to stress. And I think these are very good mitigations to actually resolving the hate and resolving how we perceive ourselves as Black people. Yeah.
All right, so Dominic shared, well, we kind of preempted. I really wanted to talk about the solutions later on in discussion, but we'll revisit the points he made. So let's just give Akosyah a chance to answer. How do you think our history is linked to how we perceive ourselves as Black people?
Yes, thanks for stating the question again, because I kind of forgot. But yeah, I mean, everything that everyone said already. I think that's for every nation, every group, every people. The now is kind of like a reflection of what happened in the past, or yeah, a result of what happened in the past. So and what is still happening today. So those things, yeah, like slavery and colonialism and all these things definitely have a huge impact on how we see ourselves. And I think also, things that happened during the like, I don't know, that might be an unpopular opinion, but during the civil rights movement, because especially like in America, African Americans, they were doing well for some time, but integration kind of got people in a place of always asking the white people for acceptance and for, yeah, to be integrated into their spaces. And I think a better move would have been for us, as you also suggested, for us to create our own spaces, which we have in some places, but it's still, especially in countries where we live side by side with non-Black people, with non-African people. It's always, we're always in the situation of having to ask for acceptance, beg for inclusion, and never really can focus on how we can get together. And I think once those institutions change, the mindset also changes, So, yeah.
And I want to piggyback off of something you just said about how we do have our own spaces for our community. But ironically, when we create our spaces for just us, it's more of an all-inclusive than it ever is just for us. I have never witnessed something just for Black people only be just for Black people, because that doesn't really go over well. For an example, HBCUs, tons of other type of people in there, whether it be sororities, fraternities. When we have something that's Black based, we have to allow a couple other people of different races in there in order for everybody else to be like, this isn't something that's dangerous. This isn't a gang. This isn't a group of violent act. They have to be doing something positive because they let a white person in or an Asian person in or someone of other color or other ethnic background in here to prove that all of these Black people in this one situation isn't dangerous. And I think that that's something we have to work towards to have something just for us, because I don't think we ever have had that before without interruption from other ethnicities.
All right. Some awesome points there. Akosyah, you said something up earlier about how on what you see around you might not be what is presented to you as beautiful based on you being in a predominantly white nation might not necessarily represent you. And in that same frame, I want to ask you a question. Well, all of you guys a question. Do you think that lighter skinned Black people, we're talking about Black people now, lead more comfortable lives than darker skinned Black people?
Yeah, I do agree. I do agree. And I've secondary experience with it as well through my mother, where I remember one she told kept telling me about a story about her time in England where she was like in a kitchen. She was working in a bakery at one point in time, and because she went up, she actually got a little bit lighter in her skin, and because of the climate up there. And there was somebody who was much darker than her, who was Black, and what happened is that person faced a lot of racism, like a lot of racism, and my mother had to like be a person that tell off the white people, tell off them up there like that what you're doing is not okay, because I think what they did was like they put something in the cake for them to for the Black person to actually eat, and it was just very disgusting. Like, I just want to point out that I think once it is that you actually have a lighter, you're lighter than the average Black person, I think naturally you'd need a more comfortable life, but not in the absolute sense of leading a comfortable life. I actually believe that. And to just look at an experience like that for somebody to go through something like that, and then even looking at some things that happen in like even Atlanta, for example, those different places, how, persons who, I'm not saying that all Black people, I'm not saying that all Black people are, going through the same thing, but like some Black people, I think they don't go through it as much as other people. I actually believe in that. But as I said, it's not in the absolute sense. Definitely, I would agree that, your point. So that is something that I would have to say. Anyone else on your point?
Well, in Germany, it's a bit tricky because there are not so many, like compared to, I mean, I'm not even going to mention Jamaica, but even compared to America, there are not as much Black people around. So it's kind of hard to tell. I mean, some things are definitely noticeable when it comes to media. So, for example, if you're a model and they're looking for a Black model, what they mean is biracial. So they will definitely and all the girls who show up to the audition will be mixed. So, and they will pick from that. So, but they will say Black, or when you look at billboards and whatever, you will see, and that is particularly for women, you will see maybe a group of multicultural people, you will see a Black boy there, but not a Black girl, or if a Black girl, then she's mixed or light skinned. So that is always, oh, it doesn't miss, always. And when it comes to things like even popular authors, there's a kind of like a Black community here in Germany, and they think of themselves as being very intellectual, and they write a lot of books about racism and all that stuff. And it's usually mixed people talking about it. So like there are also Black people doing it, but that they don't get that type of media attention. So, and that becomes an annoying thing after a while, because I used to think, okay, you know, if I didn't feel like those were the only ones representing us, but now it has come to a point that it's only them representing the Black experience in Germany, and that is very one-sided because they experience one particular type of Black experience that I don't experience. So I think they should say, you know, as a mixed person, yada, 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 and not just as a Black person, because it's not the same. Those are things that are very annoying. But on a day-to-day, I think there's not so much difference. Now, when I am in Jamaica, I do notice a difference, how lighter skinned people are treated versus darker skinned people, much more than in Germany. And I think that's because the majority is Black. So if someone is lighter skinned, it stands out more. While in Germany, on a day to day, like everyone who's not white is just, you know, other or Black or whatever, you know. But when it comes to maybe nuances like beauty or they will highlight the lighter skinned ones.
I think Akosyah hit the nail on the head. And it goes back to what I was saying about sort of kind of being brainwashed. I think a lot of people forgot what the image of a Black person looks like. And now when you say, is that, I don't know if you guys have ever had this experience, if you ask if somebody is Black, they'll say they're light skinned, as if that's an ethnicity, right? So it's almost like the picture of a Black person is just a biracial person. And it's like, right, that's in there, but also that doesn't represent us because we don't have that white parent. You know what I'm saying? And then that takes me back to it's a touchy subject because you don't want to offend anyone's Blackness, but that also can't represent our Black, because coming from someone who has two Black parents, when you grow up in a household with one white parent, you may get advantages that someone with two Black parents didn't get. You know, that white parent is gonna, whether it's case by case or person by person, that white parent does have an upper hand in society, in social media, in influence, in everything, because of their ethnic background and their stature in America. Like I said, I can only speak for American. And so going back to what Akosyah said, when you see that they're hiring for, or they're casting for a Black person, or they're making a movie based on Black experiences and everyone in the movie is mixed race, it kind of makes people who are fully Black feel like, is this a movie that can even represent me? Because half of the cast didn't live the same life I lived, or doesn't share the same actual ethnicity that I share. So it's a little bit confusing, because even though you are half, being full gives you something that that white parent doesn't. And yeah, I just think that that Jedi mind trick has been really doubled down on, because to anybody can be a Black woman today, just like Akosyah said. If you have a little kink in your hair, if you have a bigger nose than usual, if your lips are slightly larger, then you're considered a Black woman, and that is just not true. We're very different. We come in all shapes and sizes as well, but yeah, the I don't know. It's a tricky question to answer for sure, but I think you hit the nail on the head.
All right, so you guys touched on your experiences being different from, well, darker skinned people, for the most part, have a different experience than a lighter skinned Black person. So Zara and Akosyah, you're in a predominantly white nation. So I'm going to give Dominic the opportunity to answer this question. Have you experienced first, before getting to you guys, have you experienced in Jamaica as a Black male colorism? In school, at work?
I do not know if this is considered as colorism, but during my time at Wilmer's Boys is an institution in Kingston, Jamaica that has like predominantly Black student community with few minorities of like Asian and white people. And normally when we find those white people come into schools, they can wear their hair in like any way, like hi, but we as Black people, we have to cut our hair very short. And not normally sometimes we talk to our administration, talk to our principals. Why it is that white people, like, my Asian friend, like Taylor, he gets to wear his hair like any way he wants, grow it out any way he wants. And for us as Black people, we have to cut our hair short. There was some kind of privilege that was extended to them. And I think that was like the closest I've ever been to something considered as colorism. But before my time at Wilmer's, coming from a country school like Ochiris High School, predominantly Black, like only one person was white. It was like the same thing, but then going and transition into an environment in Kingston, Jamaica, where I saw more white people that, in that school, even though they were still a minority, they had more flexibility in how they represented themselves and more freedom in how they represented themselves more than us. And I think that was the closest I've ever been to colorism. Anyone else?
All right, so touch on some good points there. I would assume in your rule book you'd have like a certain length hair that would be permitted, but because of like different textures in hair, like for lighter skinned people, it was the same thing at my school. You could have your hair as long as you want out. I remember this one particular time where I wore my hair in an afro, and a teacher pulled me aside and was trying to explain to me why it's so unprofessional, or it's not suited for school because it wasn't tame enough, I guess. But somebody else in my class would have somebody with like a looser curl would have their hair out in an afro, but that was fine. That was professional enough. So really, even though it might not be as overt as it would be in I assume, I'm gonna allow you guys to share, but I would assume that it's more overt in a more mixed population of people. There is still colorism in Jamaica, I would say, for sure. So I'm gonna allow you guys to share, starting Zara. Have you experienced colorism in America?
So I love this question because I'm obviously a lighter skinned Black person. So all of the colorism I've experienced has been to someone that I'm close to or someone that I love. And can I curse?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not blind to the bullshit at all. So most of my family members are of darker skin. So my only examples of colorism are when someone's trying to make a joke out of for example, my sister is dark skinned. All of my partners have been of darker skin. We take it back to middle school with the African booty scratcher and all those, jokes that kids do. And it's just, I think what it is that anytime someone sees someone that is Black, especially of a darker color Black, there has to be something wrong immediately. Like the way we can't wear our hair any style, something has to be nitpicked on, whether it's how tight our clothes fit on us, how we do our makeup, how we style our nails, how we do anything, something that's not what white people grew up on or in that culture. If we do anything that represents our culture, it has to be nitpicked on. If your hair's in an afro, that's not tame enough because we can't do that with our hair. Or if you wear, your nation's flag's color on your anything on your uniform, that we don't do that here because we don't understand, So I never experienced any colorism I've experienced tons of racism. That's a different question. Racism and colorism are two different things. And I've experienced a lot of one being in America, but not too much of colorism because of my skin tone. But I've definitely seen it, and definitely have. I've seen it. I've seen enough of it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember experiencing a lot of firsthand colorism in Germany, rather when I traveled to predominantly Black countries, for example, Jamaica. But in Germany, more the secondhand colorism, seeing exclusively lighter skinned people in the media when they say they want to present Black people. Yeah, and the only firsthand colorism I can really think of is being younger as a teenager, those days when you start dating or whatever, and especially Black boys being more attracted to lighter skinned or mixed than because you don't really have, as I said, there are not a lot of Black people here, so you don't have a wide variety of different skin tones. The majority of the Black people who are here are from Africa. And of course, there are different skin tones in Africa, but they are rather my complexion. So if you have a lighter skinned person, they're usually mixed, or East African, Ethiopian, or something like that. And yeah, Black males being more attracted to that look than to darker skinned Black girls. While yeah, so therefore you would rather see, like, if the majority of the Black women here in Germany are with white men and not with Black men, and never with mixed men. That doesn't happen. Because yeah, I don't know. Even like if you talk to them, they will say that they wouldn't mind being with a Black man. They, but it's just that they're not interested in them. So yeah.
A better question would have been for you guys, Zara, and you, Akosyah, if you experienced racism, right? Okay, so on the topic of lighter skinned people having more privilege in the Black community than darker skinned people, what has arisen from that is this phenomenon of skin bleaching. So despite the well-documented risk in terms of skin cancer, skin thinning, and various other illnesses, why do you think skin bleaching is so popular? And do you think there is a solution that we could undertake as on an individual basis and as a collective as Black people to tackle that issue of skin bleaching within our communities?
So I want to answer first because I kind of have a darker take on this question. On one hand, with skin bleaching, I would like to say it's none of my business, and whatever somebody has to do to make themselves feel more beautiful in their own eye is wonderful, right? On the other hand, all of the terrible side effects that you just mentioned, plus the sheer representation of self-hate that is just giving light to, I think is more of a problem. And I think it just goes right back in. I love how all of these questions just go right back into just how we are just programmed to just hate ourselves and our skin. And to the question you asked about, do I think that there's anything that we can do? Oh, what just happened there? Sorry, to your question about if there's anything that we can do to decrease it. I don't want to say no, but I do want to say that whatever that is going to have to be drastic, because how deep the self-hate has to be for you to literally chemically change your skin color. I don't think that that's something that's just going to be a talk like you love yourself. We're Black. We're supposed to love the skin you're in. I think that goes psychologically, because it's not just it's not like they're painting themselves white. You can get somebody to stop doing that. Just push them in the shower. Just like, stop doing this. But they're chemically peeling off their melanin. They're chemically getting rid of it, which means there's a deeper psychological reasoning to why they hate themselves and the melanin that they were originally in. So I don't think there's a quick, fast, or easy way that we could collectively decrease that, because it's so detrimentally deep.
I'd like to add, but maybe after Karen, if there's any, or may I just go ahead and add? That's fine.
You can just go
Okay.
ahead. Yeah.
All right. Not even to think, I know. Essentially, skin bleaching, especially in Jamaica, it has been popularized by our famous entertainer Vybz Kartel. And in 2010, you would have seen this song. Most of the songs about skin bleaching, bleach out the skin and all sort of thing. And essentially, that song has been a very cultural and, culturally popular. That's just the term that I have to use. And I think from that, well, not even to think, I know from that, ever since then, bleaching has been something that has been accepted as a very, very popular thing for people to do. We also know we can use even the same metric to judge, like, look at it from this perspective. Vybz Kartel would have also sing the song or about Clark's, 3 songs about Clark's shoes from England. And due to the fact that those songs has been very culturally popular, you could see how in Jamaica, Clark's shoes actually are more expensive than actually on an international scale. If I'm being really honest. Like, looking into it, you can see how popular the song has made the commodity of shoes, that Clark's shoes. So using that same perspective, imagine how priceless or how much of a price increase skin bleaching is, and how much it's actually more favored by people, and how much it's valued by people in a social regard. It goes to show that essentially in Jamaica, it's more of a way of how people, even though it's like stripping away your melanin and everything that Zara said, what I really want to point out is that in Jamaica, skin bleaching is more of a fashion thing, more than even maybe of an acceptance thing. More of a popular thing than an acceptance thing. I mean, people could look really beautiful and have probably no problem with themselves. And they just said, oh, everyone, my friends are doing it, let me just do it. But even though that kind of feeds back into like how you accept yourself, but the incentive for people to actually follow through on bleaching comes from it being a famous thing to do in Jamaica. How might we change that? How might we change that? I think it goes back to the pointers that I used with how to begin looking into ourselves and forming groups and, societies where we can have discussions about these things and build initiatives that we can learn how to accept each other and learn how to find the beauty within ourselves. Because deep down, all of my friends, some of my friends, especially from high school, people that I don't even talk to anymore, most of them bleached, actually. I know multiple people that bleached. And I can tell you that when it comes to accepting themselves, it's hard. But I think if it is a case that we find, group where we can have discussions and create movements where we can learn how to accept ourselves and realize how disastrous skin bleaching is on our skin, how it rubs away our epidermis, just leaving the dermis alone. That's something that we have to really look into and pay attention to. And that's where it comes down to. So it's more about just creating initiatives where we can learn how to accept each other, learn how to accept how we are, our natural essence, which is essentially our beauty, and how we are and how we represent ourselves.
Yes. So the question was,
The question was, sorry about that. Skin bleaching. What are the solutions to skin bleaching?
Solutions,
Basically.
okay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
Skin bleaching. Well, oof. It's a skin bleaching is a weird thing. I remember when I was again a preteen, my mom gave me bleaching cream, and it's like not no hardcore bleaching cream, but like, some regular cream that also bleaches, lightens your skin. Because she uses it, and she thought it was normal to just use it to, make your skin look cool, as they say. So I didn't even think much of it back then, and then I had to get older. I had to get like 18, 19 to really realize what I'm using and what this is doing to me. And then eventually I stopped. So, and I was also surprised when I spent some time in Jamaica how casual people bleach. Like they would, like somebody would say to another person, "You look good, you bleach." "Yeah, you see it." I'm like, "Yeah." You have no shame. So that, that's a cultural shock to me, because I would think that's something you do in secret, but no, they do like out on the street like a rob. So that's I never connected it with what Vibes Cartel, but of course, yeah, that's where it became something to do, and everyone is like bragging even about it.
normalized,
Oh
yeah.
yeah. So it's a weird thing. And it's not just, of course, in Jamaica, it's also in Nigeria and West Africa. A lot of people would bleach. And you would have these, I remember there was a time where all these celebrities came out being super white and promoting that. Or in India also, there are commercials where there's a girl and she's super sad because she's dark skinned, and then her dad gives her the bleaching cream, and then after she uses it, she's happy because now she's light skinned.
Mm.
And it's socially accepted. So I don't know if, like, there are so many things wrong in the Black community, to be honest. Like, I don't know where to start, which problem to choose from. I think, they all have a root cause, and that needs to be fixed, and then all the other things will be fixed as a result out of that. Before you continue, there are a few more things that I also noticed with this whole bleaching thing. So what happens a lot, at least, I don't know, online. So online is a different world than the real world. When you have people who look like they're bleaching, or, celebrities or whatever, oftentimes they're being shamed for it. And, "Oh, you don't love yourself, and what kind of example do you set for the youth," and blah, blah, blah. And I also seen one clip where I think they were also talking about colorism. I don't know if it was Jubilee or one of these, online panels. And there was one girl, she admitted that she would bleach, and since she's lighter, her life is easier and better, and she gets jobs, and men are more attracted to her, and all these things. So, and people were ready to shame her, but then others would stand up for her and be like, "Yeah, of course it's not right to do that, but if society works that way, it is actually normal to, you look for solutions. How do I get out of this problem that I have?" So you do that, even though you might love yourself. You might be like, "I actually like my skin color, but if I don't get jobs and I can't find a man and I can't do anything, um, then maybe that is a logical thing to do for some people." So I think it is, you know, then you wouldn't really have to talk to the person and be like, "Why don't you love yourself?" And yada, yada, yada. And then it's like, it's not so much about what I think of myself. It's about what the world thinks of me. And of course, you have to put priority on what you think of yourself. And I think, sometimes faith helps with that. If you feel like, okay, God created me the way I am, and it's perfect that way. But if you don't have that foundation, or parents who tell you you are perfect, or, something, then, what you think of yourself in the mirror doesn't matter that much compared to what the world sees, and you want to adjust that, So I think, yeah, I think so many things within the global Black community, within the people of African descent, have to change for that to no longer be an option, you know? So, yeah.
Really quick before we move on, I just want to say that even Dominic, you two, and Akosyah, you guys just put something new in my brain that I never even considered. I've been to Jamaica before. Never in my mind did I think of it or consider it as a fashion statement instead of
Zara
internalized
was just
self-hate.
about to say that we have this news program called All Angles, and they were doing some interviews of Jamaicans, and skin bleaching is very normalized here. It's like putting on a shirt, basically. So it is one thing in particular that was said by one of the persons that was interviewed, is that it was fashion over style, as in it's not really, the root cause really is not loving yourself, but it's not really recognized as that. It's more
Right.
like, as Dominic was saying, everybody else is doing it, so I'm going to do it. It's like
Right.
changing a hat, basically.
And I never thought of that,
Yeah.
because like I said before, in America, we're so traumatized by anything that has to do with race. And I think African Americans like hold being Black and like being of darker skin so tightly, because it's just like, that's all we got, you know, like they took everything else. So it's just like, we don't understand and we can't compute that a fashion statement could be stripping away your melanin. Also, what Akosyah said, I never thought about how, if this is going to help my real world life, not on the internet, but if this is going to help me get a job, if this is going to help my social life, and the idea at hand isn't pandering to white people or of other ethnicities, if you do it because it's going to help your general life, then I think that is not as bad of an idea, but it still doesn't need to be advertised. Because what I think is that people who bleach their skin want to be white, or at least the next best thing, or they want to be more palatable to white people when white people look at them, because they're lighter skin and they're not dark and scary, quote unquote. So conversations like this are really important, because that wasn't even a thought in my mind before I heard you two say that. So it's kind of like a new level of understanding, but we all know that the ground point is, maybe that shouldn't be, maybe that shouldn't be a very normalized thing, but in cultural and societal differences, it's a little acceptable. So I understand.
And also in minor reasons, for some minor reasons, it can even stem, because I even have like secondary experience with it. Like, genuinely speaking, let's say even a set of siblings, if maybe like out of the three, two are extremely white and the last one come out a little bit dark, even her might have issues with learning how to accept herself. And that can be even an incentive as to why she would want to bleach, just to look more like her sisters. I have personal experience with that. Like, these are other reasons as well, but it comes from the fact of like trying to picture your world that you live in with people and everything, and seeing how everyone gets by a certain way and going with the crowd as well. And also it comes from the fact that, oh, I need to feel like I belong somewhere. Even with the sisters example, that can be something as well, and an incentive. But it's very important that we learn to have discussions about these things. It's very important that we learn how to build institutions. When I say institutions, I mean like groups of people, societies coming together, strong Black people making a movement, making their way through the world and providing a way for themselves. I saw something on the internet one day. I was watching something on YouTube with Atlanta, and I remember that there was this woman in Atlanta saying that she only buys from Black people and support Black people. And but she creates an environment where her people and who supplies her house, who supplies her cupboards, strictly Black companies within her region. And for some reason, I agree with her, but I don't think it's self-sufficient, because I think Zara mentioned that we have to learn how to be inclusive of other people in our societies. Zara mentioned that if we're going to create a Black society, we have to probably include one and two other groups in them, so that people on the outside doesn't perceive it as being very dangerous. So I think that we can never be self-sufficient if we only rely on Black people. But at the same time, it's very needed. Malcolm X said it from years ago that we need to accept our own selves. There must come a time where Black people can recognize, that they are the minority race, and that in order to become representative of ourselves, we have to put ourselves in a position where we're not fighting against each other. We're getting rid of the problems that exist within ourselves. Because honestly, sometimes we're grouping up together as Black people and we fight against each other more than probably how other people on the outside fight against us. So if there's no unity within us, how can we create unity on the outside with everyone else if there is no unity within ourselves? If we're fighting and selling out each other, these are other things and discussions that we need to look into, and things that we need to look into so that we can get rid of the situation such as skin bleaching, so that we can get rid of other different things. There's so much in play, but I feel like this is what we have to do.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I jump right on that? Yeah, I 100% agree with that last part that you're saying. Even though I think you said we should be, but it's hard for us to be self-sufficient because there always has to be someone else from a different group in there. I don't think we need anyone else from a different group. I think we have everything we need within us and more than that, because that's why we're being exploited like that, because we have everything that the world needs. Also, when it comes to natural resources, whether it is in the Caribbean or in Africa, we're literally feeding the world. So we have everything we need and more for us, including the creativity, the brain power, everything. So and we are the majority in the world. Like maybe we're the minority in America and in Europe, but have you ever checked how huge Africa is? I mean, it's bigger than what we see on the map. It is huge. It is incredibly big, this continent, and we're not just there, we're everywhere. So we are the majority in the world, but we don't know these things about ourselves. And as you say, we don't have unity, and without unity we have nothing. So we literally seeing that right now. We have everything, but without unity we have nothing. We can't use all the things that we have for ourselves. Everyone else is using everything we are and everything we have, and we're at the bottom of everything, even though everything comes from us. And that is our fault. Like, it is our fault. Like, of course the others started it, they exploited us, they took us, they enslaved us, they did all of these things, but today it's our fault. Today we have the power and the access to unite and to come together, but we're not doing it. So yeah, that's generally when there are talks of racism also here in Germany. What annoys me a lot is the accountability. Like, so what are we doing about it? Because we can't expect the others to do anything for us. They're not going to do. They proved for many hundreds of years that they're not going to do that. So they're not going to start now. Even if we write a lot of books and make documentaries, they're not going to start. They're quite comfortable how it is.
If I could just add something in, I think our trauma in America goes back so deeply, specifically with white people, that there's no peaceful or there's no peaceful way to turn it on our favor as Black people. I'll use this as an example. I used to teach a class on Black history, and one of the students said, I wish sometimes I could take all of the Black people, of the whole world and just move us to a different country. That way we could live there by ourselves and flourish and be us. And another student chimed in and said, in America only, at least, if all Black people decided one day that we were going to get up and leave America, nobody would let us leave. They would put us in jail before they let us leave, because we, like Akosyah said, we literally feed them everything: media, entertainment, clothing, food, health and wellness. You know, we are literally the source of everything that makes this world run. And if we decided to leave by choice, they would make us stay by force, because without us, they wouldn't know how to do anything except come and get us like they did in the first place. So yeah.
And then also, sorry, on top of that, they have their own plans with Africa too. Like if we would say we would go back to Africa, when you go there, you will see a bunch of Chinese, bunch of Indians, bunch of the white people you see are all wealthy. So you know, they don't want us to go back there and realize what we have, you know.
That is true. I remember watching a TED talk on something, and I remember watching a TED talk, and there's this country in Africa. I can't remember the name. I think it's Somalia, but there is like a lot of gold there, and I heard that over the years there have been a lot of mining of the gold in that state by white people. They came in and they took resources and build their own economies with it. And essentially, if you're going to take resources, natural resources from homeland, and actually build your economies with it, what is Africa left back with to build themselves? And honestly, this might be an opinion. This might be an opinion. It might not be a fact, but sometimes I believe like with some black people allow for this to happen. Like in the sense of allowing for white people to come in and take resources for the highest money. Literally, I believe that white black people allow for it to happen, and they don't believe everyone is just doing things for the paper. There's just this chase for the paper without realizing that paper doesn't really hold any inherent value. Paper is fiat currency. It's issued by the government. Who makes up the government? Predominantly white people. Think about it. Who makes up the Federal Reserve? Predominantly white people. You have to look into the fact that if you're going to sell out things for the paper, look at it this way. Your resources are building these economies. Your resources from Africa is building American economies and the European economies. Literally giving them turnovers of like 500% on GDP per year. That's crazy over the years as well. So if you're thinking about that, and from that logic and from that standpoint, why don't we use those same resources to build our own country and put ourselves competitively in the world? Create our own systems. Do something like what, we see in Wakanda, like being so self-sufficient for ourselves that we create our own environment and we're so resilient in the world. That way, no one can take advantage of us. That way, we're not selling out each other. But these things have been happening for many, many, many years. And it has always been happening where, black people will sell out each other for money, for the highest gain. And that's just my opinion. I don't know if anyone else on this call feels the same way about it. I've heard it, I've seen it, and multiple times it happened. And if you really read news articles and read behind the lines, beyond the lines, you will see that this is true. We have to become much more if we're going to get rid of the problem of acceptance and problem faced towards Black people. It has been discussed multiple times. Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr. have discussed this a long time ago. We have to realize certain things and come back to basics with certain things. Yeah.
I agree. I'm so sorry. I think that Black people are culturally some of the most accepting and forgiving and welcoming people. And sometimes that's our biggest downfall, because of what Dominic said of inviting everybody to the cookout and just letting him come in here and get a little bit of what we got. One of my favorite quotes ever is, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And I think that's Black people's biggest downfall, is that we're so open to just be like, oh, well, come, look at we're fun. Come, please experience us. And then when the person comes experience us, they strip us from everything we have. And I think we really need to learn as a collective how to stop doing that, because it has given us it's given us nothing but downfall in the past. So Dominic, again, you're absolutely right, because on the same hand, we don't want to be categorized as mad, bitter, angry Black people, aggressive people. But on the same hand, our kindness is always taken as our weakness. So we end up in this line of like, well, what do we do and how do we treat people? Because no matter what we do, we're always at the bottom.
All right, guys. So we only have a few minutes left, and I want us to end on a good note. And so over the years, since okay, so I guess you guys couldn't hear anything I was saying just now. But I want us to end on a good note. You guys shared a lot. There's so much that I learned from this discussion. But at a point we did say that it's hard, going back to the initial question about skin bleaching, and Zara, you made no, it was Akosyah that said that she couldn't find a solution. And like, I found that like, you saying that, so, what's the word? Well, it really resounded with me, because there really is not just one solution to be made. There's no, as Zara said, no quick solution, no hard and fast solution. But one thing I want us to recognize is that over the years, over generations, we have seen a change in how we perceive ourselves. You guys mentioned like the solution had to be unity. And because of the unity of different peoples, different movements, we have begun to be proud of ourselves, being Black and proud, you know? So yeah, so I don't think it's like that there's no possible, there is no reality where skin bleaching becomes non-existent in the Black community, but it's a step-by-step generational change. Dominic mentioned at the start of the episode, can you repeat what you said? Intergenerational trauma.
The intergenerational transmission of
So
trauma.
as we move, as we raise our children and as they raise their children, as people, we can begin to move closer to that, you know, that great day where there's no skin bleaching and we fully accept ourselves as a Black people. Right. So really, really, really grateful for everybody's comment who took the time to come on the episode. So Zara from Chemically Imbalanced Black Girl Podcast, Akosyah, who is actually my cousin, guys, so we're related. So she's a social worker, health and wellness consultant, and yoga instructor. So I want you guys to check out their channels. The link will be in the description. And Dominic, thank you for joining and sharing your views as a Jamaican male.
Okay.
Right, so together we explore the root cause of skin bleaching and colorism in the Black community, as well as real-life consequences and ways to solve this pressing issue. If you enjoyed the discussion today, I would encourage you to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic. Additionally, by sharing this episode with other people, you'll expose the podcast to new viewers. So we'd appreciate that. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, keep your head up and walk good.
This has been an episode of the Vision Seekers podcast. Together we can create a society that benefits us all. Send us an email at thevisionseekers.podcast@gmail.com. Find us on YouTube and Instagram at The Vision Seekers Podcast, and follow us on Twitter at Vision Seekers JA. We look forward to hearing from you.